Madam Ambassador, your tireless and passionate service to our country is to be commended, and thank you for extending your time this afternoon. It's a hard job that you have. I want to quickly touch upon three areas in ways that I don't think because time is limited, others have questioned about Armenia, about Ukraine, and about Gaza. Armenia is something that you have a lot of experience in. The agreements this last week that took place with the EU initiative and our own commitments, I think it's an additional 65 million, if I remember correctly. What role will USA play in the region moving forward? And does this include, in your view, increasing humanitarian and development assistance to Armenia? And what can Congress do to help support you in that effort?
Well, Congressman, as we discussed recently, Armenia is at an absolutely pivotal inflection point.
They associate with us, and they want to be a Western country, and they're in a tough neighborhood.
Very, very tough neighborhood. And I did have the chance to meet with the Prime Minister on Friday, along with European Commissioner van der Leyen and Secretary Blinken. And that was a really historic event, actually, to see that embrace of Prime Minister Pashinyan and the reform efforts his government is making. I think what you'll see is stepped up work across a range of sectors. Their economy is very dependent on their former Soviet partners, including their food security. So right. USAID is looking at investments in the agricultural sector so that they can produce more in the way of wheat, especially at home.
We should talk about partnerships there in the California, especially in the San Joaquin Valley. A lot of Armenian expats that have been very excellent in agriculture, and there may be some synergy that we could develop.
Indeed, and I'd love to follow up with you on that. That is something we are trying to do more systematically at USAID, particularly with diaspora communities that are as dynamic as the Armenian community. But they need support for the people of Nagorno-Karabakh. More than 100,000 people no longer have their homes. One of the things I talked to the Prime Minister about is housing, permanent housing for these people. At the same time, we press Azerbaijan to allow these people to have
because of time, if you
return.
could provide me maybe a little descriptive with your staff, I would appreciate how we could work and follow up on that. On Ukraine, and we're all passionate, and I just pray to God that we're going to get this package passed next week for the Ukrainian people. But besides the tanks and bullets, the additional assistance necessary to help Ukraine economically and on a humanitarian standpoint, and you talked about how they've exceeded agricultural production in some instances, and it was the breadbasket, but what do you think in terms of the longer-term efforts?
Well, let me just quote the head of the IMF, who described Ukraine's economic growth rate this past year, which I think was over 5%, as breathtaking. I mean, what a lot of attention is rightly paid
given the fact they're in the middle of a war,
to the bravery of the citizens. Now, you could say when 30% of your GDP gets taken out by an aggressor, you can only go up. But that's not even the case. I mean, they have to do the kind of energy repairs that they do on the fly when Putin targets their energy infrastructure. The farmers are planting in fields from which they had to demine or sometimes wear protective equipment in order to go out and actually do the harvesting. So the fact that Ukraine has reverted to its pre-invasion agricultural numbers virtually is just extraordinary.
You want to add that to your long-term descriptive, because I want to get to Gaza.
Well, I would just say they are on a trajectory where if bombs weren't falling and you could unleash the tech capabilities, their tech sector grew by 5% the first year after the war. Their young people, the education that they have, I mean, they are on a pathway to Europe, not only because they have the formal documents.
All the more reason we need to pass this next week.
It's absolutely indispensable. And if I could just say, there are three buckets, right? There's the direct budget support, which we've had a back and forth on with Congressman Keene. There's humanitarian assistance for the world, of which Ukraine is a part. But there's the development assistance, the support for agriculture, for energy, for anti-corruption. That is the investment in Ukraine's future, and that is in the Senate package as well. And I worry it's not talked about even by the friends of Ukraine, but that is USAID's bilateral assistance. I'm glad you got a chance
to reiterate that just now.
I tried to.
One moment, and this is a comment, Mr. Chairman, if you allow me the discretion. Obviously, averting a famine in Gaza has to be our first priority. That we can't in any other way think about that. That we've got to prevent a famine from taking place there. But in your descriptive, again, when reconstruction begins to take place and what that looks like when this war ends in Gaza, what our role is and how we partner with our moderate Arab countries on reconstruction is something I'm very interested in.
Well, I think American companies are already engaging and will be incredibly important players, but that is why the investments in anti-corruption, in independent media, in open procurement, all of these investments now also put us in a position to see a more optimal form of reconstruction than occurred, say, in Afghanistan.
Thank you for your service. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Congressman.
Madam Ambassador.